I talk a lot about chicken behavior and ways to keep chickens on this channel. But I know that not everyone keeps chickens like I keep chickens. Not everybody wants to or can keep their chickens 24/7 free range, letting them have the entire backyard. So I had an idea. I'm going to set up a demonstration run that is more of a size that people might be more likely to have in their backyards, so I can demonstrate the sorts of things that I've talked about in my videos, and you can see how that would apply in a smaller situation. So we're gonna get into setting up a demonstration run today and going over all the things you need to think about in terms of location and getting it in. The spot that I've chosen to put up a 21-meter fenced run. So this is an Omlet fence system that you sort of see half put up behind me. I've just laid out the basic shape and I've put together the poles that the kit comes with because they're a bit fiddly. They come in 3 pieces that you have to put together, which is actually really convenient in terms of the box that it arrives in, but a little less convenient because you do have to click the posts together before you can use them. But I really like the Omlet fence system. I've used them for my other fencing to keep the chickens in the backyard, so I thought, well, we'll go ahead and use it for the demonstration run. So this is 21 meters, which is a pretty good size for a little backyard run. Most people are going to have the room to put up something this size. And we'll talk about how many chickens you can realistically keep in here, which is about 3 if they're permanently in here, and 5 if you are letting them out for a little bit of time each day. But we'll drill into that a little bit more as we go along with this demonstration series. But I'm going to get started putting this up. I really like the portable fencing run systems because you can move them, which is a great idea, but they aren't very predator proof. So that's something to keep in mind if you have high predator pressure. This kind of a run system is not going to keep your chickens very safe, but you can use the Coop to keep them safe at nighttime. So you just have to be aware of your context when you're choosing what kind of fencing that you need to go with your run. But let's get into it. Let's get this run up so you can see what it's going to look like. There is something to think about when you are thinking about where to put your run in your backyard. So I've chosen this spot for a few reasons. One, it is sort of out of the way of where I'm doing a lot of things. It's away from the gardens, it's away from the other areas where the chickens like to hang out a lot. So it's a good spot. It's using space that's not currently being used by something else. And you want to think about things like the sun. Where is the sun in the morning, in the afternoons? Will you have shade for your chickens, and will they have some sun to actually hang around and do their dust bathing like they like to do? So this spot does get a bit of sun, but as it moves into the afternoon, it does get some shade as well. So that's a good spot for any chickens to be. And you also want to think about where are your prevailing winds. So here the wind kind of comes in from this direction. So the ivy fence here provides quite a bit of good shelter from the main winds that cause problems if it's going to be a storm or something. So that is a good choice for here as well. But there are lots of considerations that you need to think, and there's probably going to be a lot of compromises when you're thinking about where to put your chicken run. You're not necessarily going to get every single perfect thing that you need. You really want to consider as priorities sun and shade, because those are the things that you can't necessarily do a whole lot about. You don't want it to be summertime and your chicken run to just be getting absolutely baked by the sun. And equally in the winter, you want your chickens to actually get some sunshine. So spend some time watching the sun and the shade in your yard to figure out what's going on with that, because you can do a lot about the other things. You can provide shelter from the wind and things like that, but you can't necessarily overcome beating sun or a freezing cold, never getting sun in the winter kind of situation. into a wee bit of an issue with a manufacturing, I wouldn't call it a defect, but this does happen sometimes. So I've got to the point where I was trying to put the gate in, and I have discovered that the mesh, so this is a plastic extruded mesh, so sometimes it can get a little bit higgledy-piggledy in the box. So what's happened is the mesh has gotten quite twisted, so it's not actually going to work very well to try and get my gate nice and straight here. So I can either stretch it and wait for a few hours to try and bring it back to sort of like straight, or I can just cut with a decent pair of nice strong garden snips. I can cut this piece of the fence off and just rejigger the posts. I'd only have to lose like a meter and a half and just keep on going. So I'm not really sure which way I'm going to go with that. We're going to come back and finish the gate at a later point because I have to think about how I'm going to do this one. And it is something that does happen. I mean, these are not overly expensive products. I'm not too upset about it, but yeah, factor in more time than you think you need to put your run up. But how the gate is supposed to work for this system is you have a gate post that you put on as your fixing point, which would actually go on the other side over here, and that just clips into the post. And that, if you can envision that, I will show you at a later point in these series how the gate works there. It's pretty simple. I really like it. And when you're putting in a freestanding run like this one is, you'll need guy ropes to hold the corner posts. Otherwise, they're going to drift in and make your whole fence droop. So do keep in mind when you're picking a spot for putting your run, you're going to need space for these guy ropes to come out extra from where your run posts are going to be. But it's not too tricky. I'm sure you can make it work, but they are quite important for this kind of a system. And usually the system here with the mesh, and doesn't really matter what kind of mesh you're using, it'll come with tent peg type little doodackies that you use to fix the mesh to the ground. Now, if you've got an electric poultry net system, these will be plastic because electricity and metal are not a good idea together. But that will help keep the mesh against the ground. I don't find that I really need it here in my situation, but you may find that if your chickens like to scratch around a lot, or if you have some kind of critter that you want to keep out, like rabbits or something like that, then you might need to fix these down to the ground. Of course, when you're setting up a living space for your chickens, they're going to need somewhere to sleep. So you're going to have to put a coop in here somehow. So you've got a few choices when it comes to coop selection for a run system like this. The one that I would recommend is to get a coop that is raised up off the ground, because chickens like to sleep raised up off the ground, and putting a raised up coop. So that's one of the ones that has legs where the chickens go up a ramp into their sleeping and laying area so that they can go underneath the coop when they are not sleeping. So you're not taking away any of the space in the run by having that coop in here, and your chickens can use it for shade and shelter. You can put food and water underneath that spot so it's going to stay out of the rain, it's going to stay out of the sun, because you don't want the sun beating down on your chickens' water area in the summertime in particular, because you want them drinking water and you don't want them to be drinking boiling water. So that's a really, really good option where it's not going to take away any space from the limited space that you do have available for your flock. So that would be my number one recommendation. Put your coop in the middle, make sure it is one that your chickens can go underneath, and you're golden. Your other choice is to not have the coop in the run itself, to use the coop outside the run, and the coop is then going to form part of the fence. So in this situation, I would put it over here where the gate is going to be once it's fixed up. So the front of the coop would be there where the gate's going to be, and that's going to form part of the fence, and the chickens would go in there. And the benefit to that is that you don't have to come into the run to get to the coop, and that can be quite convenient. You can have a door, you can check eggs and check chickens without having to come all the way into the run space. The only thing I would say about that is make sure that when you're putting your fence posts up against the coop to form your fence, that the coop is at least as high as the fence is going to be. Otherwise, you're going to create a spot for your chickens to potentially escape. And if you're going to do that, you are going to need to cut the run fence into 2 pieces, because otherwise you're not going to have a gate. So do keep that in mind. That's totally fine. You can cut the run fence in quite easily and put your gate somewhere else. But instead of the gate being there, your coop is there, your gate's going to have to be somewhere else. So those are my 2 recommended sort of options for coops. I wouldn't recommend putting a coop into the run that doesn't have space underneath it, because then you're taking away the limited space that you do have available for your chickens to run around in by putting a coop just on the ground taking up space. So I wouldn't recommend going with that unless you don't have any other option. It is important to consider what is the ground, what's making up the ground where your run is going. So right here at the moment for this area, it is a wood chip base that was already here, and you can see that there's plants and stuff growing on it. Now that's going to work really, really well for a wee while with the chickens in here, but eventually it's going to need to have more wood chip or some kind of organic matter put down. So if you are putting your run up in a grassy spot on your lawn or something like that, that's great. It's going to work really well for maybe a month, maybe 2 months, and then you're going to have to think about what run surface you need, because your chickens are going to decimate all plant life in here. And if you're not careful, your run is going to turn into a muddy or dusty mess of goo and stinky chicken poop. So it is very, very important that you think about this ahead of time. If it's going onto grass, sweet, you've got a little window of time that you don't have to worry about it, but then you need a plan. So I would recommend checking out my chicken compost run videos about how to manage that situation, because that is my recommendation. But it is something to think about. So don't just think that whatever surface you're putting it down on is going to be good for the long term. It's going to need some management. The other thing to think about is, what are your chickens going to do hanging out here in this run? So you're going to have a coop somewhere for them, so that is great. But what are they going to do? Right now is just a square. They're going to have fun digging up grass and bugs and whatever's here to start with, but that's not going to last them for very long. So how are they going to get their exercise? How are they going to get some entertainment? So what I like to do is do a cruise around and just look for stuff in my yard, like on walks. Maybe you have a neighbor who has lots of interesting things that they might be happy to give you. So I've done a little wander around my yard to see what I could find to put into this run, and I found some blocks of old wood. So these are just hunks of log, basically. They've got some bugs crawling in them, making homes in them. They're sort of half rotted down a wee bit. So the chickens are going to love just scratching at these a bit, and you can use them to form the posts for putting up a little perch or something like that, so that you start to add some multi-level entertainment for your chickens. So you find something, pop a bit of wood on it, see how stable it is. If it's stable, you probably don't need to do anything. If it's not stable, you might want to just drill it into your logs, and then that's just instantly given you something for your chickens to jump up on, jump down from, and that's going to help keep their bones strong and keep them a bit amused. And you can put a few different things like this. Just the logs by themselves will provide some entertainment for jumping up and down. It'll help to break line of sight when you have some little pecking order issues going on with your flock. So be creative. You're going to need more than what I've just brought in here. But do keep in mind not to put things too close to your fences, because you don't want to provide a convenient ladder for your chickens to just get out of your run. So do keep that in mind when you're furnishing your chicken run. I just want to talk again about how many chickens you can put in this size of run. So this is a 21 square meter run. And in my opinion, so if we're sort of applying the sorts of concepts that I talk about with chicken behavior, if you're going to only keep your chickens in this run and they're not going to be let out, then this is a suitable size for about 3 standard size chickens. So that's a fully grown, regular size chicken. If you've got bantams, so smaller chickens, then you can have 5 in here. In my opinion, and these are relatively low stocking rates I'm talking about here, but in terms of avoiding issues with chicken behavior, these are my recommendations for how many chickens will fit in this space. So 3 standard size chickens if they're never getting let out. If you are going to be able to let them out in the evenings to have a little bit of a cruise around the wider space, then 5 chickens in here would be okay. So that is not very many chickens for this size of a run. If you are following 3 square meters per chicken, you'd be able to have 7 chickens in here, but I am saying that's too many chickens to permanently be in this space. So either 3 if it's all the time in here, never getting let out, or 5 if they're going to be able to stretch their legs outside of the run. And that is quite important because a lot of the things that I talk about in terms of keeping your flock calm and happy, that their behavior is positive, that you're not running into issues with bullying, feather pecking, all of these different things that people say they have issues with their chickens. Well, if you're aiming for a calm, happy flock, you need to keep your stocking rate quite low. Obviously, this is not a fully set up run yet ready for chickens to come into, but I'm planning on doing lots of little episodes about different things that I talk about on the channel in a demonstration of how you can make it work in a smaller space. So we're going to talk about things like rotating the run to different locations and what might be involved in that. We're going to talk about breaking line of sight. How do you put in different things to break line of sight to reduce the stress and pecking order shenanigans going on in your flock. We'll talk about multi-level run furnishing, where you can really look at maximizing the space inside here by using different levels. We're going to look at things like food and water stations and different options for how you can get your food and water in so it's convenient for you and for your chickens. We'll look at things like dust bathing locations and places where your chickens can cruise in the sunshine and how you can make them feel safe by putting in shelter for them and what that looks like for a chicken rather than what that looks like for a person. So if you have something that you would love to see covered, do let me know in the comments and I'll make sure that I get that one done nice and soon so we can really start to get a feel for what these sort of concepts that I talk about look like in a smaller space that most people have, rather than letting your chickens have your entire backyard, which is not necessarily recommended both for your own sanity and potentially for the safety of your chickens.